Yo, it's Guido coming at you with yet another premium tank, a brand new tank called the Charlemagne, a British Tier 8 heavy tank. Put your wallets away, all right? It's not that kind of heavy tank, all right? Get your mind out of the monetization gutter. You just bought your Sturv K and here's another premium and we got to get this thing. Well, unfortunately, if you're planning on buying it, and fortunately, if you're planning on using bonds, you can get this thing sort of in the bond shop. Well, it's the special bond shop that's attached to Rank. I have another video later talking about the new tanks in the regular bond shop, but this is now a ranked reward that is unlocked when you get far enough through ranked that you can then pay bonds for a Tier 8 premium British heavy tank. Now, I can't use music, so I recommend that while you watch this, you play Steely Dan, Kid Charlemagne in the background. It'll get you in the mood, because if it's kind of a funky, odd tank from yesteryear. Oh wait, that's the song. A funky, odd song from yesteryear. And this is kind of a funky, odd tank as well. On the surface, it's got a couple things going for it. And then when you dig in, you go, my goodness, what about these negatives? And then you have to sit back and say, hold on a minute. Based on the way this game is played, is this an okay tank? Well, we're going to get into that. We'll talk about it. Don't believe the hype. Everybody panning it, telling you it's atrocious. I'm not going to tell you it's amazing, but I'm not going to tell you it's atrocious either. Let's look at it and get a little objective view on the Charlemagne Tier 8 British heavy tank. We'll do this the standard way. Overview, tech tree considerations, the 3D model, look at a comparison amongst some of its peers, my stats, my setup, and a couple gameplay examples for the brand new Tier 8 British heavy tank, which is a bond tank that's only available in the special bond shop that you unlock from Ranked. Holy cow. That's my mic. All right, let's get started. Well, alrighty, overview. Do you have the Kid Charlemagne going? Did you like the intro to that song? Really cool. Very, very unique song. Anywho, heavy tank Charlemagne. Roll, breakthrough heavy tank. Did you know that the Defender is a breakthrough heavy tank? That's where it starts weird right off the bat. Project developed by School of Tank Technology, 1958. Presenting a medium tank, but this is a heavy tank in the game with a high crossing capacity, maximum weight for its type, and was planned to be strong enough to compete with Soviet heavy tanks. It's got a gun with perfect stabilization. Not really in the game. Okay. And the frontal hull was going to be a V-shape. So let's take a quick look at this bad boy. Relatively center-mounted turret right there, so that's not going to present any weird rear-mounted turret stuff or really far forward-mounted turret. Look at the front angling. Pretty good. Not quite Soviet-esque, but not bad at all. Decent on the bottom plate as well, although the bottom plate is quite large as you look at right there. V-hull-ish, not quite as much again as the Russian. A rounded turret, but not the saucer shape, and then it does have a weak spot. Cupola on the top, not very big as well. And it's a little side skirt action going on there. We'll take a look in tanks.gg how all this works. A little bit of angling on the hull underneath, but not too bad. A fairly standard looking tank, really. In fact, quite standard for a lot of the British tanks. It looks more like everybody else's tank than most of the British tanks did. This is my sheriff's account. They gave us rentals for this tank on our sheriff accounts, so that's the only place I was able to show you in garage. I don't actually have this tank. Okie dokie, let's look at tech tree considerations for the Charlemagne. Well, seeing as it is a premium tank, you're not going to unlock any modules. You will note that as a trainer, the Black Prince runs around with a radio operator, so 4 of your crew will still work in that. I don't know why you would be training crew for your Black Prince, but let's move on to the more common tanks, and especially the Super Conqueror and the Conqueror. Starting at the Harfen, you're going to have a commander, gunner, driver, loader with the radio operator on the gunner, so that will work. I think I just came up with a name for the Charlemagne for most. It's going to be the Charlemon. Most people are going to think that. We're going to talk about it though. Not quite. Not quite. That is it for the tech tree considerations. Let's take a look at the 3D model, because that is actually where an interesting story starts to be told with this tank. Here she is in tanks.gg. Look at that, the angling on the side right there. Looking pretty good. The pike nose all around 200, over 200, 220, even the lower plate at 220. That's kind of straight on. Now, most people be a little bit higher, look down, depending on the height of their turret and their gun. Still, though, you're going to need pretty decently north of 200 to go through it. So lower tiers, 6, 7, could have a little bit of trouble with it. You get some side scrape going on, starts looking really nice. Actually, the far side of the pike nose. Remember, your flat nose, or your flattening out the pike noses when you do these kind of angles. But it doesn't lose too much overall, because the angle is still pretty good. It's actually a complex angle going in several directions right here. So pretty cool actually overall. And then there's that angled slightly troll side of the hull right there, so angled downward. Now the turret, kind of interesting. It does show some pretty good strength along the edges, but what happens here is it gets fairly flat plated right next to the mantlet. And even though it's rounded, it's just this section, because it kind of goes up instead of up and back at the same time. You know, if you think about the saucer shape of the Russian turrets, they have a complex angle going on, which helps it out. And this thing kind of comes straight up right here. And even though it's rolling around from left to right, the straight up and down is quite straight. So you're going to end up with some relatively weak turret armor there in the 200s. About the same as the hull. But if you're doing the turret peeking game, if people can actually pick you apart at this little edge right here, that could be a bit of trouble. Then you get into the nice thing about rounded turrets, which is when you get to the edge, you get into these auto ricochet points. So moving back and forth and attempting to keep them from pointing straight at you or shooting straight into the side of your cheeks here is what you're going to want to do. And then, of course, this thing is only 100 or so, 120. That quite weak, but not as prominent and bulbous as a lot of hatches on top. So armor layout wise, the interesting part of this is actually not bad from a pub stomp standpoint, especially top tier. You've got some pretty significant armor everywhere on this thing, top tier. Same tier, most of the higher pen tanks are going to be fine. Anyone pressing 2 is probably going to be starting to pen you right there. And then, of course, 9s and 10s, as they do with most tier 8s. So we're going to get into this. It resembles a little bit Defender armor to some extent, but I think that overall it's not quite as fire and forget as Defender armor is. It will require a little bit of care and feeding to make it work for you, but not bad. So hence the breakthrough tank thing that Wargaming came up with. All right, let's move on. So we're going to compare it, the Charlemagne, the Carnarvon AX, which is another premium tank, heavy tank that the Brits have with a pretty good turret, and then the Defender, which I'm sort of comparing it with. And one of the reasons I'm bringing you to the Defender here is one of the defining characteristics of the Charlemagne here is 440 average damage. I'm sorry, Charlemagne. I mean, I don't actually hate this tank. I really don't. 220 penetration, which is in the ballpark. We'll take a look at the gold pen in just a moment. And then we get into some kind of craziness. Realize that Carnarvon AX is a bit of a different animal. It's spitting only 230 alpha out, but it shoots much faster with a 10.85 rate of fire. Slower even on the reload than the Defender. This one's a bit of a head scratcher. This one, unless you ascribe to Russian bias and all that good stuff, a bit of a head scratcher, because as we get through the rest of the numbers, it doesn't quite add up to Defender levels, and yet it's still got a slower reload time at 16 seconds. With my setup, we'll look at it in a minute, I'm getting about 13 seconds, and that can be painful. 440 is lovely. 16 seconds is a long reload. We're going to jump down, because what that ends up doing is give you a lowly 1,649. This is for a tank with 100% crew, no buffs, no equipment, nothing else than that. So you're getting the commander bonus out of that thing for these numbers. 2,495 on the Carnarvon AX. The Defender even is a relatively low DPM, and it's sitting at 1,836. Other bonuses, though, we have a -10, just like the Carnarvon. So we're talking about a ridge fighter, a decent ridge fighter. 15 elevation, so that's much better, obviously, than the Defender level right there. Man, that gun loading and that DPM hurts it. And then you've got to consider it actually takes longer to aim than the Defender, and it has the same dispersion at 100 meters. And this is the one, I said head scratcher early. Man, I'll tell you what, it's a breakthrough tank. I think it's kind of the British version of a Russian Tier 6 heavy, from that time period as people were trading ideas and trying to figure out, how to fight each other. But it really comes out on the low end a little bit. And I think Wargaming really limited this thing's possibilities by giving it such an atrocious offensive capability in there. But that being said, I have often said myself that DPM is not everything. It's how easily you can get it down range and whether you can employ the DPM. Still, though, you have to wonder at 3.36 aiming and 0.42 dispersion, that's one of those things that's supposed to help you get DPM down range if you're low DPM. And you want good penetration, and it's sitting at 220 less than a Defender. That's not bad. 220 is not bad for a standard shell, but holy cow, the alarm bell's kind of going off a little bit right here. We get down to survivability. It has a good 1500. It's the same as all of these guys. Here's the armor. 130 on the whole, as we looked at, pretty good. The turret is a little bit light. It really is. With that cheek weak spot only sitting at 170, even though it's rounded, that's questionable. The turret is going to be a little bit questionable, especially when taking on higher tier tanks. Could be a bit of an issue for the tank right there. Side scraping is okay at 80 on the sides, not nearly Defender level, obviously. So okay with the side scraping. And we get into the mobility. The mobility, overall, its speed is not great at 35, but it has pretty good specific power for a heavy tank, which means that it will get up and go. Quick off the line, no real top end is the kind of idea with this tank. That tends to make tanks in World of Tanks feel sprightly and maneuverable. That helps with them, say, pushing up over a ridge to take a shot on a ridge fight, getting going. That if you have a good specific power, it means you can boom, get going pretty quickly, even though your top end's not amazing. At least you get out of the gate and get moving around. So that will help it feel a little bit more sprightly, perhaps, than otherwise. But the traverse speed's kind of low at 27. In fact, it's less than the Defender. And if you've had the Defender and driven, the Defender is quite sluggish, as is a Carnarvon actually at 29, which is better than the Charlemagne. So in a straight line, burst acceleration, okay for a heavy tank. A little bit clunky with the rest of it, and your top end is not great at 35. It's concealment, it's a it's a tier 10 or a tier 8 heavy. They don't really have any. View range is down at 380. Looks like the Carnarvon, I must have left. Did I leave the kettle on in the Carnarvon? What have I done here? I've left the kettle. Oh, yeah, yep, I did leave the kettle on. It's got vents going on. All right, that number did not make sense. So it's sitting at 380, Charlemagne at 380, and pretty much dominating over the Defender. Defender has atrocious view range, one of its weaknesses. So what do we have here? We have a kind of a weird one, to be honest. I mean, it's relatively heavily armored. It's got good depression. It hits really hard, but its dispersion and aim time just kind of crush the ability to get the rounds down range, and the penetration's indifferent, really, for a standard round. But how does that work in practice? Let's take a look at my stats, my setup, and a few games. All right, guys, a bit of a rush job here. This thing just came out, kind of surprised all of us CCs anyway, I think. I think a lot of people knew that it was in the files, but we had no idea it was going to come out as part of rank. So I've only got 4 games under my belt. I've won 2, lost 2. Averaging 1,868. Look at the armor use, though, at 0.89. I expect that to come down, although it might not come down much. The armor does seem to be useful, and we'll talk about it as we look at some of the replays here. Doing okay with 1,013 average XP and 723 assistance, which is actually pretty decent. I managed a 3,000 damage game, and we will take a look at that game. So not a whole lot to glean from that. Fairly standard numbers for a heavy. I realize it's only 4 games. I'm not telling you that this is the top of anyone's list of must-get Tier 8 premium tanks, but from that limited exposure to it, and I've done a lot of these and played a lot of tanks, it feels like a capable, average, heavy tank. It really does. Let's take a look at my setup. Now, you've always got to be realistic, tell the truth, and have the caveats. This is a sheriff's account. I am running crews with every skill, except for the Artie Warning one, which got dumped on type. You see he's just starting to train it, and he'll probably never get it based on being on his 10th skill. There's no way I'll ever play enough to do that. Happens to be my Super Conqueror crew. Again, it's a sheriff account, so all the crews are there with all kinds of stuff. However, on the other side of it, I did not run purple equipment. I did run food. I did not run directives. I ran 12 AP rounds. The gold round is 270, which is actually pretty decent for an APCR round for a Tier 8 heavy. Of course, it's 4,800 every time you shoot it. Another owie on this tank. The shell velocity is 597. You heard that right. Not 1597, 597. That is in the realm of the KV2's HE. Remember, The write-up said a low velocity, perfect stabilization. Wargaming, what happened to the perfect stabilization? Because I don't see it. Shell velocity, 924 on the premium round, which still isn't amazing, but at least it's near 1,000, which is okay in this game. 1,000 is okay. 597 is going to hurt you for lead fire on long distance, any long distance really for that matter. And then with a .42 dispersion starting out, sniping, adding the shell velocity together with that in the aim time, my goodness, snap shooting in this thing is an absolute nightmare. It will be an absolute nightmare. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the replays. And I ran large kits. Like I said, I did run food. This crew does have brothers in arms, and I have regular equipment. I ran vents, rammer, vert stab. I think that's probably about the best you're going to do unless you start throwing purple stuff on there, in which case you will take some of these numbers down. What did that get me, though? It only got me to 0.39 dispersion, my friends. Yikes. Only 0.39 and only down to 3.06 aiming time. So while it did help the gun handling and brought me up to 2,000 DPM, it's still at the bottom end of even acceptable, really, these days for a gun that's accurate and employable and useful in multiple situations. This thing is quite niche in where it can be very good. Very interesting. Let's take a look at some examples of gameplay, and we'll wrap it up for the Charlemagne, the brand new British Tier 8 heavy premium tank that is only available with bonds through ranked when you unlock the special ranked bonds store. All right, I hope Kid Charlemagne is still playing in the background from old Steely Dan right there, because that is the soundtrack for this video. Let's get into some gameplay for the Charlemagne. Okay, first game, we have a decent game. This was actually the first game that I ever played in the tank. Got it all set up, and we are here on Parisdorf, heading down in our Charlemagne, and we're going to go, and I said, you know, let's just go see what kind of heavy brawling this thing can do. Try to get out of the way of the Navy SEAL. Do you suppose that guy's really a Navy SEAL? It could be. I don't know. Could be. So we come down here. We already have a defender showing up. Bit difficult right here. What I wanted to avoid with this game was giving too many turret hits, and I also realized the look down on the hull would be a problem. I sneak one in. I hadn't even looked at the dispersion on this tank. I wonder if I would have played this different if I had looked at the dispersion to begin with. Because I'm kind of doing some snap-a-lama-ding-dang with this thing right now. And it ends up working out, although it then starts to not work out pretty quickly. A little bit of a rush job there. I didn't want the TS5 to aim in and get a good shot. Now I'm having serious issues with being able to come around this corner here. Make sure you're playing Kid Charlemagne in the background for this battle. It's all better that way. We're in all Tier 8 battle right here. Tank got into position no problem, decently fast. Like I said, that acceleration works. We'll have another replay after this, and we'll talk about its maneuverability. The low kind of loses its mind. It gives me a little bit of an opportunity here to take some aimed-in shots on him based on the way he's handling his side scraping here. And he's also minimizing, to some extent, minimizing the problem with the high dispersion on his tank, because he's nice and close. So in these close brawls like this, you're probably going to find that the gun isn't that bad, really. But the long reload is a bit painful. He doesn't quite get in there enough. And then I get a little bit of trouble here because, unfortunately, I'm unable to finish this dude off. He actually hits that dude. Look how long the reload is. I'm just, like, waiting. I'm trying to get a shot here. And it looks like that just plain old miss. So there's the dispersion coming in. You would think that at that range would have had a really good chance of hitting him right there and getting rid of him. Opportunity here maybe to go to HE and try to take him out. But he's staring in there. There he goes. He fires, so I come in. I'll just take an opportunity to shoot this guy, but I miss. I take a hit from the TS5, trying to get away. There we go. But I've burned my kit. Now I got a problem poking, so to speak. If I poke now I'm going to try the armor. Let's see if the armor here can handle the Lurva. And no, it can't. It was downhill, and he's getting into that side plate, so it's not a great profile to show him. So that stunk. And then I missed. Right, that dispersion hurt me, and a 34 hit point low I've been unable to take out right here. Also, I'm spamming gold. Yes, I am. The other thing is the shell velocity is not hurting me because we're so close. So you're not seeing any sniping long range stuff here. So this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier in the early part of the review is, if you can minimize the problems, and then I just plain old poke too far out. Should have gone after the 100's lower plate. Don't quite get into, or I do get into the lower plate. He's pointed downhill though, so that lower plate's actually angled worse for me when I'm shooting at him like that. So we're doing okay. Trying to figure out if I can get in here and get a shot. I don't want to pop out and let the defender thump me for 440. I really want to get rid of this Lurva if I can. Checking 6 to see what's going on behind me as far as my guys. One thing you got to watch for, it's a sheriff account. You tend to get YOLO'd, so as soon as it looks like someone can kill you, they may just sell out and try to get you. Just trying to find that spot. And a ricochet. That's not that surprising right there. I thought he was just going to come around the corner, so thankful he doesn't. I have enough people behind me right now to keep him busy. Turret's fast enough to point at me. I'm hoping he just fires at someone, but he's not going to. And I'm just like, let's back out of this. They killed a couple of my buddies. None of those shots are good. I maybe should have taken that one. Just can't quite get there. I don't want to sell out and just eat the 440 from the defender. I don't have very good confidence that my armor is going to hold up. 100-01's coming. We're starting to get a bit of advantage at 7-5. I'm going to come up top here. That worked. Okay, not bad. Not bad. And unfortunately, I don't realize this because I can't really see it very well on my minimap. You might be able to see it. There's actually a Sturv S1 up here that I didn't notice. And I walk right into this guy. That sucked. So we'll just aim in. Look how long that aimed. I mean, any other heavy tank would have fired a while ago. We'll fix it. And then the 130 comes back. And what I should have done here, once he started looking, he was looking for an angle. If he gets out far enough, he'll have enough elevation to get to me. I should have just backed out behind everything. But I get hit by the Sturv. Then I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll hit him. Look at that reload. That hurts right there. Most other heavy tanks, other than a few of the very long reloads like this one, would already be able to fire right now. And unfortunately, I can't do it. So he bounces. We'll back out. Sturv misses. And I make a big mistake right here. I should have absolutely just gone after the, or should have absolutely backed up. I think yeah, there you go. The Su-130 actually is the one that kills me. He's able to back up enough and get enough elevation on that terrain to get a shot on me. So I end up with 3,019 damage out of that thing. Ends up being a win on my first battle. So, what do we take out of that? If you can get into a close brawling situation and you're not overmatched via tiers, it actually has some capability. You're hitting hard. The armor's okay. I ended up bouncing 1,550, so not an absolute monstrous, bounce everything from every direction kind of thing, maybe like the Defender can be in this kind of tiering right here, but not bad. Okay, not bad. Let's look at the next example. All right, second game was, I think, the third game or so. I just want to kind of show you, this is a more wide open map, so I've got to get to places. There's more openness, clearly top tier, so that's a good thing. Only some 8s and 7s involved right here. It is Muravankadorf, Himmelsvanka, and we're headed over here to the east side. We're moving on up. Remember, hit the play button on Kid Charlemagne. Okay. I don't know. That's not how it goes. I'm pretty sure. Anywho, I guess my beatbox career is over at this point. We are going to head down south over here on the east side. Use a little bit of the gun depression. And you'll notice, while I'm not blazing through at 50 kilometers an hour or anything, it's getting where I need to be. I'm out in the lead. Of course, I tend to be, so most people are a bunch of passives back in the back. And we're going to come up here and use a little bit of this thing's gun depression. So this little tree right here is a nice place to come up and find things like... Oh, T-44 saw me. Oh, look at this dude. Look at that depression. Boink. We'll back out of it. Hey, look at that. We got a bounce. 490. All right. I would love to go up there and get a 2-for-1 on the Saint Emil. The reload is so damn long that if I do that, I'm going to be exposed for way too long. Hell, he may even out-reload me at that point. So I've got to back out. That is one of the things you're going to have to deal with this tank. You are waiting for reloads a bunch, but you're hitting for 440. But you're having a hard time hitting because the dispersion is terrible. And you're also firing a softball at people. It's the world's biggest, hardest hitting softball, right? It's a softball that's thrown by one of those speed softball pitchers. One of the girls that do that underhand thing and it comes at you. at 500 million miles an hour, right? And if you're close to it, then it's really moving quickly. But if you were far away, it wouldn't really be going that fast. You know what I'm saying? I guess they're so close to the mound that when they chuck that thing, it's a lot like a 90, 100 mile an hour fastball would be from a further away pitching mound. So we'll push in here. I had to fill in that time while we just kind of wandered around. All right, I'm going to tell you that the dispersion, while bad, it worked out for shots like that. As long as it wasn't too far away, we're going to actually get to a fantastical shot with this thing, and we're going to give you an example of the one thing that a 500 meter per second shell is going to do for you. It's probably closer to 600, but you know what I'm saying. A slow shell. The one thing that they're actually fantastic for. Can you guess? Can you guess? This is a romple stump. I wanted to show you the mobility. It's okay, right? Here we go. The acceleration worked. We're going to come over here with a good power to weight. You're going to come up and over hills pretty decently. There you go. Right up and over. We'll push on in here, and we're actually going to speed this up because it takes us a while to get in to this fight. Zing, zing, zing. Here we come. Up and over the top. Nice gun depression right here. We're going to find, there we are, the side of the TS5. A little bit of zoom in. That's good. And we're just going to push into these guys. Look, I mean, it's freaking 10 to 1. I'm going to try an auto aim on this, and unfortunately, I probably get into his upper. I either get into his upper plate or I hit directly into the corner of the tank, but holy cow, what a bummer. I really expected just to kill him. Now we're on a big reload. Here we go, here we go. Not bad, right? Not bad. All right, we're going to get into the one thing that your slow meters per second shell is going to be good for, right? All right, there's a T-29. I just take that shot. Who knows? There's a reason I took that shot. Well, I'll get to it in just a second because you're going to see another shot. There's a reason I took it like that. I wasn't going to get another one anytime soon anyway. Might as well see what happened. But here we go. So we've got the T-29. He's right there. Oh, hold on. M12. Okay, that looks good. And just see the arc? Woo! That's what the softballs in this game can do. It's going down. It's very realistic. But when you're talking about something that's lower and you've got some terrain between the two of you, you can actually lob stuff over the terrain. It's not easy. It's essentially what Artie's doing to you when they shoot over things. And I just dropped that right on top of the poor M12 and ended up. I giggle every time I see that. I'm not telling you that that's what makes this a tank worth getting, but I don't know, when you're grasping at straws trying to figure out something good to say about a tank, you really have to dig deep sometimes. Look at that long reload. Just takes a really long time. In fact, I tried another shot on the 416 right here, and I did not. It was not that far off, actually. I can see we told them not to cap. Of course they did. Why wouldn't they? We'll just shoot this thing. I mean, that is actually not far away from him, right? There's his turret. I don't know. Yeah, there it is. And it goes just right over him. Oh, fantastic. Let's wrap it up, guys. Well, all right. What's the final verdict on the Charlemagne? I kind of liked it in spite of its shortcomings. You got to like the 440 Alpha. That's nice. The mobility is good enough to get around. The armor is useful in certain situations. Can be troll. I don't know if it's going to reach a 1.0 or close to a 1.0 armor usage if I played 100 battles in this thing. The gun depression is nice. But then you've got to look on the other side, and I think the negatives outweigh the positives a little bit more than the positives would outweigh the negatives, because you're talking about a 0.42 dispersion to begin with, over 3 seconds aim time, a terrible DPM, which DPM is not everything, but it's some of the things, and when added to a bad aiming, to a bad dispersion and a long aim time, that can be a problem. Now, break on that, the 122 TM was roundly criticized because of basically the same things. Granted, it's a medium that's hitting hard, so it gets medium matchmaker, so there's some kind of interesting bully things that it can do. This thing's going to have a little bit of a hard time bullying other heavies just because it's going to have so few shots going downrange. But when it does hit, it's going to hit hard, and it has -10, and it has a decent turret. So while it's not a perfect analog between the 122 TM and this tank, the point being that the 122 TM is doing much, much better than people gave it credit for when it first came out, which I'm going to pat myself on the back. I said it was going to be a pretty good tank. I said it had a chance to be a pretty good tank. And it is up near the top. It's not at the top. It's within the top 15 at least. And that's a pretty crowded area at Tier 8 premium mediums. Will this thing do that? I'm saying in this case, probably not. I don't think it's going to be the worst premium out there. Certainly not when matched up against some of the Tech Tree tanks. But it has enough negatives in its kind of quirky setup that it's going to keep it down just a little bit. But as far as a good gun depression, fairly decently armored, hard-hitting tank heavy tank that can get around enough to be effective, it'll be all right. All right, now the question, of course, is do you spend bonds on it? Yeah, 15,000 bonds is what this is going to cost. In theory, in ranked seasons later, the price will go down. Don't quote me. Maybe, I don't know. That's pretty pricey when you're talking about some pretty good Tier 8s that are available in the standard premium store for 8,000 bonds. I think that 15,000 is kind of ridiculous, actually. It's going to end up being something that people who have tons of bonds and have everything else might get eventually. I don't think anybody should prioritize this over probably 3 or 4 other tanks, but if you're a collector and you get through enough ranked to unlock this and you've got the other stuff, or if you've got enough bonds, might as well pick it up. It's kind of a fun little tank. I actually enjoyed the thing. It's not terrible, but I'm not telling you it's great either at the same time. Dare I say it's balanced, right? And if you pinned me down and forced me to make an overall statement on it, I would say it's slightly below average, but has a bit of a fun factor based on the hard hitting and the decent armor. I think that's fair enough for the Charlemagne. Maybe I coined a term there for the old Charlemagne. It's not really actually a lemon. That's all I've got. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. I know there's probably going to be a lot of dissenting opinions on this. A lot of it goes down to the idea, which I didn't mention at first, but if your description or if your definition of a bad tank is a tank that's not near the top and very good, then you're going to call this a bad tank. If your definition of a bad tank is a tank that, looking at the overall Tier 8 heavies, it's at the very bottom of that, then it's not a bad tank. That's all I've got. Let me know what you think down below. We'll see you guys later.